Story 1. The Airbnb key that opens two doors. The rain had a soft, persistent patience as I climbed the narrow stairwell, luggage wheels tapping the aluminum edges of each step. The keypad blinked a friendly green, the code accepted on the first try. And still, the host had left a physical key, tucked in a small dish by the door, with a note, just in case. I didn't like how easily it fit my palm, how warm the brass felt, as if it had been waiting. Inside, the quiet smelled of detergent and a lemon cleaner that didn't match the photo's gentle sage and cedar promise. The fridge hummed from the kitchenette, low and even, a soothing white noise. I wanted that noise to carry me through the night. I wanted a safe, tired collapse. The listing had called it a top-floor unit, but as I set my bag by the couch, there were footsteps above, light and childlike, crossing, pausing, crossing again. I froze and listened. The AC sighed. The footsteps stopped. When I closed the door fully and set the latch, it didn't feel like it latched. The weight of it leaned back onto the frame, as if the hallway pressed a palm against it from the other side. I pressed again. It yielded, settled, then relaxed half an inch, just enough to whisper a draft. Across the hall, a door clicked with the same keypad rhythm as mine. Beep, beep, beep. A pause, a cheerful tone, then a gentle hinge sigh. The hallway returned to its stillness, yet I heard the ghost of a television somewhere. A familiar murmur, a laugh track too distant to be real. I pulled out my phone to confirm the Wi-Fi name. The listing had promised Street Name 2G. The only network nearby was Unit A Guest. It felt close but wrong, like a mirror set at an angle, catching part of me and missing the rest. I texted the host. The typing bubble appeared, then vanished. Silence. The mirror by the door was mounted at chin height. When I stepped in front of it, the version of me arrived just after I did. Not much, just the sting of a late blink. I moved my hand slowly. My reflection obeyed, a fraction behind, then caught up. I tried to laugh at myself, mumbled something about poor lighting. The room took the words and kept them. Down the long hallway, a utility closet thumped with the steady rhythm of a dryer. 11 minutes apart. A soft thud that came as I set my toothbrush in the bathroom. 11 minutes later, when the AC cycled cooler. Then again, when I lay on the bed, rain counting the minutes in faint tapping streaks. It was a patient metronome, far enough to ignore, close enough to live in the wall. I wanted sleep. The day had been long. The city outside had its own wet hush that suggested rest was possible. But the footsteps above contradicted the listing. The misnamed Wi-Fi contradicted the photos. And the key, still warm in my pocket, contradicted the keyless keypad that had opened so easily. I told myself to stop cataloging strangeness. I turned off the lamp. Time stretched in thin layers. The fridge hum leveled my breathing. The dryer thump timed my heart. Somewhere between those sounds, the door across the hall whispered again. Just a hinge shifting. Not a full open, not a full close. I didn't move. I let the room decide if I belonged. The mirror on the closet door reflected a soft page of darkness, the untidy outline of my bag, the small bowl that held the key. You know the feeling when a room pretends to be familiar, because the furniture is in the right places. The couch under the window, the small rug with geometric patterns, a plant that looked alive in the photos, but here was plastic, its leaves too matte to glisten in rainlight. It all performed hospitality, and still, the air had the taste of a conversation paused mid-sentence. My phone screen lit my face, the blue casting shadows up into my eyes. I scrolled the listing photos, looking for anchors. A bookshelf by the far wall, a stack of 3 novels, a framed poster of a city skyline. I turned. My far wall showed the same paint, the same proportions, but no shelf, just a blank rectangle where the poster should have hung. The rain softened, the dryer thumped. Another message to the host, another bubble, then nothing. The signal showed a single bar that flickered to none, then back again, as if the building breathed. I placed the phone face down and listened for my own apartment, the reliable creaks of a known place. None came. Only this borrowed space, lending me its sounds, expecting nothing in return. When I finally reached for the key in the bowl, intending to tuck it into my bag and forget it, the hallway light outside brightened a shade, then dimmed. Perhaps a motion sensor, perhaps a timer resetting. My door leaned slightly inward, eager to undo my latch. The mirror, patient and glassy, held the room with a blink that was almost mine. I told myself to ignore it and sleep. Therefore, the thump moved closer. Not in the closet, but inside the wall behind the headboard. A soft, padded palm against the plaster, timed to the breath of the fridge and the sigh of the AC. I lay very still, and the room lay still with me. Tri-fail cycles and rising dread. Listen closely. When a room feels slightly wrong, the mind wants a list, proof that it's only nerves. I sat up, turned the lamp to its lowest click, and opened the listing again. The bookshelf was supposed to be to the right of the couch, a row of worn spines, a little ceramic bird on top. I squinted across my room. Fresh paint, faint roller marks and slanting rain light, but no shelf, no nail holes, no shadow where something had been. I pinched the photo wider. The poster over the shelf had a skyline cropped at the river, a smudge where a helicopter might be. I raised my eyes. Blankness met me like a polite smile. The room was almost the photo, but a breath to the left, a breath to the right, as if the camera had lied about what mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from a number not saved. Host backup, it labeled itself, like a spare tire for hospitality. The message used my name. There had been no introduction. If this door feels wrong, it said, you can use the other door. I stared at that line. The other door. The hallway held only two, mine and the one across from it. The dryer thumped, right on time, and then, half a beat later, something gentler answered behind the headboard. I replied, "What other door?" The bubble appeared, then vanished. A minute passed. Rain faded to a drizzle. Another message. Across. It will be familiar. The latch had never convinced me. I slid out of bed and let the door rest against my palm, opening with that small surrender it had been wanting. The hallway light brightened by a shade without flickering, as if a decision had been made in the wiring. I crossed to the door opposite and lifted my key. It shouldn't have fit. It slipped in as if cut for it. Beep, beep, beep. The same cheerful tone. The door sighed. The room inside was my room's twin, built from the same idea. The couch under the window. The rug lifted on one corner. The plant's leaves a little too matte. The bowl by the door, and in it, a twin key, warm as a pocketed coin. The air smelled less of lemon, more of clean laundry. Still wrong, but wrong in a softer way. On the counter sat a fruit bowl with 3 apples and 2 pears, just like mine. I leaned close to one apple and saw the crescent bite mark that had been cosmetic in my room. Here, the bite was deeper, the skin darker at the edges, as if the fruit had been tested twice. I straightened and listened. The fridge hummed. The AC breathed. Those sounds matched the rhythm across the hall, syncing like 2 metronomes that had learned each other's swing. I set my palm on the wall by the headboard. Thump. The echo wrapped around my hand. Behind that light padded knock was another, more deliberate, as if something rehearsed timing with the building's systems. I told myself it was pipes. Pipes don't keep to 11 minutes. I locked the opposite door, checked the windows, and stepped back into the hallway. For a moment, the lights pulsed once. Not a flicker, not a fault, but a nod. My original door waited, a half-inch ajar, as if it had been breathing through its seam. I locked both, crossed both rooms, touched counters, opened cabinets. Identical glasses, identical stacking bowls, 2 mugs with faint scratch rings inside, 1 mug in each room more worn than the other. I tried to call. The signal swam, then sank. The voicemail picked up without ringing, and what played back wasn't a recorded voice, but the sound of my own breath from a minute ago, the small rasp where I'd cleared my throat, the nervous swallow between words I hadn't said out loud. I ended the call and stood very still until my own breathing returned to my chest. Back in the first unit, I lay on the bed and listened to the footsteps above. Childlike steps, circling, pausing, circling again. The listing had promised a top floor. Maybe the roof had learned to walk. Maybe memory had weight. The dryer thump shifted, closer, settled behind the wall, as if it had found my heartbeat and wanted to time me. Another message arrived. "Use the other door if this one resists," it said. "Doors are better when they agree." I stared at that line until the words felt like a tune stuck in my head. I set the phone down and watched the mirror. My reflection took a blink to arrive, then smiled at me, delayed just enough to prove it could choose. I thought about leaving altogether. The rain had slowed to a whisper. The stairwell would shine with a thin tide of water, and the street would have puddles that reflected someone else's night. But my bag lay open, half unpacked, and the idea of repacking in this breath-held quiet felt like breaking an unspoken rule the building had made for me. I moved between the rooms, locks clicking under my fingers. In one, I closed the curtains and counted to 20. In the other, I opened them and counted back. The AC units sighed in unison, then one half step before the other, catching up like echoing thoughts. In the first room, I placed the key back in the bowl. The thump paused. In the second, I placed the twin key in its twin bowl. A soft television murmur rose from nowhere, then cut out mid-sentence, like a cough stifled behind a hand. I lay down again and chose stillness, and the rooms leaned in to listen, every hum agreeing on my name without speaking it. Climax and ambiguous resolution. Time was running thin in the room's slow breath. Then both locks clicked. Not one after the other, together, a gentle, practiced unfastening, as if the doors had agreed to stop pretending. The hallway lights pulsed once, warm to cool, like lids lowering. The mirror by the door brightened a shade, and when I glanced, it didn't hold me here. It showed me lying in the other unit, my head turned toward a wall I wasn't facing. I stood, careful, and the reflection stood, delayed by half a heartbeat, then leapt ahead, meeting me in a place I hadn't reached. I raised my hand. In the glass, my hand was already down. The dryer thump stopped mid-journey, the quiet that followed soft and padded, like someone standing on the other side of thin carpet, listening. Choice pressed close. 2 rooms, 1 key in each bowl, 1 version of me arriving late, 1 leaving early. I needed 1 room to name me. I stared at both mirrors, the lag in one a full blink, the lag in the other only the length of a breath. I chose breath. I crossed the hall, lifted the warm key, and set it in the fruit bowl. Metal touched ceramic with a careful chime. The whispering television cut like a throat cleared and then silenced. The AC's sigh gentled until it became a soft presence rather than a sound. In the doorway, the other room waited open, its mirror holding only hallway light. I stepped back without crossing. The hallway exhaled. Somewhere above, the child's steps circled once, then faded as if the ceiling had remembered stillness. My phone buzzed with one last message from host backup. "Thank you." No period, no name. Just gratitude like a receipt printed without totals. I slept. Not deeply, not safely. But I slept, and nothing in the night asked me to move. Morning was thin gold on painted walls. The rain had gone to find another window. My email chimed as the building's pipes found their morning voices. "Thanks for checking out of both units," the subject line said, stamped between polite logos and a smiling footer. No charges, no note. The host did not answer questions I did not send. I packed without ceremony. The keys stayed where I'd left them, or so I thought. My bag zipped with its usual small protest, and the door, for the first time, closed with a sound like a decision that would hold. The hallway was only a hallway. I didn't look into the other room as I passed, because the mirror there didn't deserve another version of me. Outside, wet stairs, a sky already moving on. The city's morning traffic braided itself without me. I went home. Days folded into each other the way they do when you let them. Then, one night, when sleep had already found its place, a click came from my bedroom door. Not loud, not demanding, just a notch falling into a groove. Every 11 minutes, learning the room, patient as rain. I reached for the key bowl on my dresser and found a weight I didn't remember keeping. Warm brass, as if it had waited through the whole drive, pretending to be mine. Footer. No charges, no note. The host did not answer questions I did not send. Story 2. The crew's cabin with the extra door. Settle in. Listen closely. The ship took me the way a lullaby takes a child, not with joy, but with a careful rhythm that said, "Hush, we're moving." The corridor carpet softened every footfall, swallowing the click of my bag wheels. Far down the spine of the deck, elevators chimed like polite reminders that the world still had floors. I wanted horizon and nothing else. I wanted that clean line where sky rests on water and your thoughts have to choose their size. My cabin had no window, a narrow bed, a mirrored closet, a humming vent that filled the small space with a steady, low breath. I told myself solitude would be enough. The door closed behind me with a rubber kiss and a magnetic seal that felt more like an embrace than a lock. I unpacked slowly, letting the engine's thrum set the pace. It was a bass note I could feel through the soles of my shoes, as if the ship were a heart beating beneath me. The air tasted faintly of metal and lemon, and somewhere in the walls, tiny clinks traveled like little messages being tapped along a rail. I ran my hand along the closet mirror. It was cool and clean, reflecting a version of the room that seemed 1 degree brighter than the real thing. The vent hummed a pitch that settled the mind. I lay back on the bed and counted breaths, learning the ship's rhythm the way you learn a new apartment's creaks. When I rose, I parted the closet's hanging robes to tuck my shoes away and found, hidden by their fabric weight, an extra door. Slim, unmarked. Not the cabin door to the hallway. This one waited in the closet like a secret spine. The handle was smooth and cold, not the matte metal of the visible locks, but something old-fashioned, a quiet lever that knew how to keep still. When I pressed it, there was a gentle resistance, the feeling of a held breath on the other side. Not a barricade, more like someone resting a hand there, asking without words. I didn't push. I let the door keep its request. I asked a crew member at dinner about utility access. Their smile came easy and stayed on the surface. Closets sometimes conceal panels, they said. For ventilation, nothing to worry about. Polite, practiced. Then they changed the subject to the dessert menu and the spice in the tea. The ship swayed just enough to locate your stomach and remind it to be humble. Back in the corridor, The carpet accepted me like a quiet pasture accepts a single step. I counted doors to orient myself, though there was no reason to. Numbers marched cleanly. The elevator chimed, somewhere behind walls and corners, soft as lullabies. The air grew cooler near my cabin, as if the sea had a hand on the handle. Inside, night settled like a blanket that had known many shoulders. I placed a shoe against the slim door, not as a challenge, just as a note to myself that I'd chosen a side. The vent continued its even hum, but now and then the tone shifted, a low dip and a return, the way a voice clears itself before speaking. The ship moved, and with it the smallest things offered their music. Hangers tapped faintly against the rod. Glassware in the built-in shelf kissed and parted. The bed frame gave a soft tick that seemed to answer the engine. I slept in pieces, counting by the vent's breath. At 3:47 a.m., there's a precision some nights prefer, the shoe nudged forward a fraction. The door gave a whisper inward, not far, just enough for a seam of cold to exhale into the closet. The darkness beyond smelled like brine and laundry steam, clean and mineral, warm and wet at the edges, a contradiction that made sense only here. I lay very still, as if stillness could convince the ship to continue without me. My breath found an answer in the dark. No sound, not yet, but a shape of air that matched mine, a presence that understood cadence. Morning came pale and efficient. I lifted the shoe. The leather was damp, salt-stained in a lace pattern the sea draws without permission. I laughed once, a small sound that felt like making change. In the corridor, a neighbor lifted their eyes the way people do when something polite has been keeping them awake. "Heard two voices in there," they said lightly, nodding toward my door. "Ship carries sound." I nodded back. I had slept alone. The vent hummed. I listened to it as if it were saying something I might need later. Outside the closet, the extra door waited with the patience of a tide, the kind that returns, even when you forget to watch. Moving deeper into the darkness, I did the simple thing first. I wedged the door again, this time heel first, pressing the shoe deep so the leather bowed and the sole bit the carpet. I told myself that friction would keep me honest. Morning found the shoe shifted, damp again, salt crystallized along the stitching like white lace. The leather had warped into a curve that matched a pressure I hadn't applied. In the hallway, a neighbor folded a brochure with sleepy hands and gave me a courteous smile that carried a question. "Long night?" they asked. I nodded, careful. "Thin walls," I offered. Their eyes flicked to my cabin number and back. "Heard two voices," they said, like gossip that didn't want to be cruel. "Sound travels." I let the line rest. It felt like a message placed on the wrong door. I went to guest services, the bright desk that handed out answers like mints. I explained the extra door, the damp shoe, the hour the room preferred. The staff member listened with practiced kindness and typed into a system that probably had a code for everything. "We'll reset your ventilation," they said. "Sometimes the hum drifts." They smiled. I nodded. The ship kept breathing beneath us. Back in the cabin, the vent's tone had shifted a degree, from a steady low to a whispering rhythm that felt deliberate. Consonants suggested themselves in the pattern, syllables without vowels, the sound a language uses when it tests your name in private. I lay on the bed and let it speak around me. The mirrored closet reflected my listening posture, and for a second, my chest rose there a half-beat late, as if the reflection had its own ship to ride. I pulled the robes aside. The slim door waited, mute, but the seam between it and the frame seemed darker, like breath condensed and dried, like a line where two climates met. I pressed my ear to the panel. Beyond, a corridor sound, but slightly wrong. Footsteps that didn't match the ship's roll, a soft tap-tap that arrived half a beat late, as if someone paced in a room where gravity swayed at a different angle. I eased the handle, It relented with a gentle courtesy. The opening revealed a hallway like mine, but not mine. The carpet stripes ran at a slant, climbing a little as they moved away, a ship within the ship tilted by a degree the rest ignored. Door numbers marched in confidence but counted backward. 428 became 426, then 424. The air was cooler here, and the scent felt layered. Brine first, then detergent, then something like hot iron just after it's doused. I stepped out because the floor asked me to. Doors faced me with their polite peepholes, and down the length of the slant, a bend promised a continuation I couldn't see. I walked 3 doors and paused. My footfalls returned a moment after I placed them, a delayed echo that sounded like someone keeping time with me from a step behind, mirroring stride and still remaining unseen. I turned quickly. The corridor simply continued, patient as a page waiting for ink. I counted the reversed numbers under my breath, a child's trick to stay real. 424, 422, 420. My tongue didn't trust the sequence. I reached a junction where the corridor skewed again, and saw my own corridor through an angle of light, the way a mirror will catch another mirror and make a tunnel of versions. The elevator chime drifted in from elsewhere, a soft glockenspiel note that took a second longer to arrive than it should. I didn't go farther. I kept my head level, my steps deliberate, and returned. The door to my cabin waited at the angle, dressed in its ordinary wood, with the magnet ready to kiss the frame. I slipped in, closed it, and leaned back, letting the stillness take my shape. The bed was made, tucked corners I never make, the crease like a line drawn by someone who had practiced the exact angle of my rest. On the pillow, an imprint of a head turned toward the closet. The shallow oval matched the weight of my skull, but I hadn't slept on that side. The vent whispered around a new cadence, a small breath that answered mine like a polite conversationalist who doesn't want to interrupt. I sat, then stood, then opened the closet again. The robe I'd hung had shifted half an inch toward the door, belt trailing the way a line of salt trails when the tide reaches it. I lifted it and placed it across the threshold. It lay there like a boundary. The air cooled against my knuckles. I called again, not to complain, just to hear someone else locate me on a map. The hold music was a cheerful melody that didn't belong on water. When the line picked up, the voice thanked me for my patience and confirmed that vents had been reset, that everything was within range. I asked about connecting doors. Some older models, the voice said, have shared panels that were sealed. They paused. Your cabin shouldn't have one. We let that sentence sit between us a little too long. Night returned with a practiced hand. I lay down and listened to the engine's thrum deepen, then rise, then settle, as if the ship had found a pocket of sea and adjusted its lungs. At 3:47, the time the room had chosen, the robe on the threshold lifted at one end, not high, just enough to acknowledge movement, like a greeting that is also a test. The door stayed closed. The seam breathed. The vent whispered 2 syllables that could have been my name if the sea had taught it. I spoke without sitting up. "Stay on your side," I said softly, as if to a neighbor sharing a thin wall. "I'll stay on mine." The air cooled further, and the robe settled again, peaceable, like a line drawn in sand the tide respects for one more moment. Night returned, thick and salt-sweet, and the ship's breath settled into a hush that made every small sound precise. I lay on my side facing the closet, robe still drawn across the seam like a chalk line nobody wanted to smudge. The vent exhaled in a careful pattern that found my pulse and learned it. I didn't look at the clock. I knew the time by the way the room narrowed. At 3:47, the handle eased without clicking, a careful courtesy, and the door swung wide enough for cold to spill in like fog that had learned to be polite. It smelled of brine and laundry steam, warm and wet at the edge, the contradiction that belonged only here. A second breathing threaded mine, gentle, patient, no rush, no threat. Its cadence matched me like a friend repeating a line back to be sure they heard it right. I didn't sit up. I spoke to the dark as if to a neighbor. "Stay on your side," I said, and the air seemed to listen. I lifted the robe and laid it straight across the threshold, belt trailing like a soft boundary. "I'll stay on mine." The robe settled, heavy with damp, as if held at both ends by hands that respected rules. The engine's thrum rose a degree, then dropped, a heartbeat startled and soothed. Lights dimmed toward dusk, though I didn't touch the switch. Not a blackout, just a grace note of less. The extra door drew inward another inch, slow as a tide that doesn't want to wake the shore. My breath and the other breath found the same length, the same small pause at the top. I said a name I don't say out loud, just to see if the room would claim it. The vent folded the syllables into its hum and returned them as a rhythm I recognized, not word but shape. I thought about crossing. I thought about closing, hard, and wedging wood under metal. Neither choice felt true. The robe drew its line and waited. "Let's agree," I whispered. "You keep the sea, I'll keep the bed." The air cooled, then warmed at the edges, like a nod passed through cloth. The door eased back, not shut, just less open. A courtesy returned. The second breathing remained a moment longer, matched mine once more, then drifted into the hum as if it had been a layer in the ship all along. Morning arrived with brisk hands. A knock, polite, and staff at the threshold with a cart. "Cabin reassignment," they said, professional and light. "Maintenance needs this space." Their eyes skipped the closet the way trained eyes do. I packed. In the new cabin, the closet held only shelves and the mirror's clean face. No slim door. No seam that breathed. At the desk, they thanked me. They said there was no door in that section. They returned a robe folded into a neat square with a laundry tag I didn't recognize. "Found with your items," they said. It wasn't ship issue. It was mine. Months later, nearly asleep at home, I heard the soft hush of a sea breath from my closet, the door swaying once on still air, as if a tide remembered the route, as if the agreement still held, just outside the light. Story 3. Roadside Motel. Room that forgets you. Now the road. The kind that runs straight so long it forgets to end. Dusk thinning the sky to a tired lavender. The vacancy sign flickering as if it had learned to blink like a person. The office smelled like old coffee and a citrus cleaner that had lost its shine. Behind the scarred counter, the clerk watched a tiny TV with the volume low, snow dancing over a late-night ad that promised something cheap and perfect. Their eyes stayed on the static even when they slid the card across to me. I wanted a quiet bed and a door that knew how to close. Nothing fancy, just a place to turn the highway off. The keycard needed 3 swipes before the reader's red relaxed into green, and the handle gave that gummy resistance old doors learn after years of lotion and heat. Inside, the air conditioner hummed like it had settled on a single note and refused to argue. Thin walls held a history of other nights, a muffled laugh, a cough, a shower shutting off with a rattled decision. I tossed my bag onto the lone chair and caught my face in the mirror over the sink. It was me, but not tonight. Yesterday's shirt, the one I'd folded and left at home. I turned, and the fabric I wore matched itself again, present tense restored. I faced the mirror once more. Yesterday had waited for me there, just behind the glass, polite and exact. I touched my collarbone and watched a beat pass before the reflection complied. Nowhere else was open without pushing farther than my eyes could keep straight. The phone, plugged into a tired outlet, gained 1 percentage point and then gave it back. Outside, the highway droned like far surf, steady, indifferent. A freight train horn called from miles away at the same minute each hour, a ritual I didn't agree to and couldn't stop. I set my wallet by the lamp and read the room's small story. 2 paintings of the same beach at different times of day. A stain in the carpet that had shadows of other shapes inside it, as if stains remembered their ancestors. The sheet rustled like pages turned by a patient reader. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt springs locate my weight without resentment. The AC kept its hum. I listened to it the way you listen to a stranger breathe on a bus. The peephole glass made the walkway a fisheye world, and beyond it, the neon vacancy sign blinked its tired syllable of welcome to no one. At 2:13 a.m., luggage wheels rolled past, right on time for a travel ghost. I looked through the peephole. Empty concrete. The sound continued, steady, heading toward the ice machine that probably hadn't worked since last summer. By dawn, the carpet outside would show fresh tracks that belonged to nobody staying. I checked the keycard sleeve to be certain of my place, because certainty is a bedtime drink. Room 21, dark ink, a flourish at the 2. The number bolted to my door read 12. I stood there, stupid and slow, matching digits like a child doing a puzzle with missing pieces. The desk clerk had circled the sleeve number before sliding it across. The ledger paper under their hand had showed a column of names, 2 lines crossed out with the same pen. I went back to the mirror because sometimes the fast answer hides in the most obvious wrongness. My face arrived on time now, but the towels behind me had a fold I hadn't made, and the plastic cup by the sink wore a ring of water I hadn't left. I lifted the cup. It dripped once, like a clock. I told myself to shower, to reset, to let steam write new rules. The showerhead coughed, then settled, and the water carried the metallic trace of pipes that had learned too many voices. When I wiped the mirror, a sentence held where the fog thinned slower. You stayed here before. The letters weren't carved. They were the memory of a finger's path, the way glass can keep a gesture if the air is right. I leaned close and watched the sentence fade, the last word lingering as if it had farther to go. The freight train called again, on the minute. The AC hummed. The TV offered the same late ad the clerk watched, volume low, tones sleepy with promise. I lay back, shoes off, body angled to see the door number through the gap in the curtains. 12. The sleeve on the nightstand insisted on 21. The room's hum took my name into itself, softened it, and let it drift. I let my eyes close and felt the bed learn me, and somewhere just outside the light, the motel tried to remember who I'd been. As the story drifts onward, I took the keycard sleeve to the office and placed it beside the bell. The clerk didn't look away from the tiny TV. Room 12, they said before I spoke, voice thin with fatigue. I turned the sleeve so the circled 21 faced them. Their pen traced the air, found the ledger, slid to a page where 2 names were crossed out in the same impatient line. 12, they repeated, as if fewer syllables would make it true. Their eyes dipped to the static, to the late ad, to the promise of cheap and perfect. Back outside, the walkway held the day's stale heat, trapped under the eave. The door plate still read 12. The sleeve still swore 21. I slid the card. 3 swipes, then green. Inside, the AC's voice hadn't changed. I pressed my ear to the wall and listened to the room next door breathe like a sleeper in a chair. At 2:13 a.m., luggage wheels sang the concrete again. I looked through the peephole. Empty. The sound drifted left, then right, like a ritual that never decided on a destination. Dawn would print fresh tracks in a pattern I couldn't keep. I tried the simple reset. I showered again, let steam billow until the ceiling dripped, let the mirror glaze to a dull moon. When I wiped, the words came back, faint but obedient to habit. You stayed here before. The letters dimmed, then, stubborn, returned in a ghost second pass, like a finger retracing a path it never forgot. I whispered, "When?" The glass stayed quiet. The drip from the faucet answered in a slow, patient metronome. My phone, sulking at 15%, chimed with a small photo suggestion. A new album the system had decided to make for me. Motel. Dates I didn't recognize. A picture of a bedspread with the same repeating shell pattern. A television showing that same late ad. A corner of a lamp with its fabric shade bruised on one side. I swiped through and found my shoes at the edge of a rug that matched this one's stain in reverse, as if the room had been mirrored and rewound. I didn't remember the route last year. The route remembered me. The bed told on itself. The imprint on the right side deepened, though I'd kept to the left, a silhouette that rolled toward the nightstand and left a hollow where a shoulder would be. The alarm clock blinked 12 out of spite. Then it stuttered, reset, and set itself 2 minutes fast, an urgency I hadn't asked for. The television, politely mute, chose the late ad as if the clerk were inside it, eyes lowered, voice soft, promising comfort with a price that never quite landed. I decided to leave. I packed, zippers scratching the quiet, shoes finding their mates under the bed in that blind grab we use when we don't want to stoop. I opened the door onto the walkway, turned to lock it, and saw across the lot another door cracked open, a soft wedge of darkness inside. The number over it read 21, its paint a little newer, its edges sharper. The breeze, if there was one, gathered me toward it. Inside, the room wore the same furniture, the same 2 beach paintings at different hours, but the stain on the carpet had its shadow flipped, like a photograph held up to a window. The AC hummed half a note higher, brighter, quickened, as if this space preferred conversations to naps. The mirror showed my current clothes without argument. The towels were folded a different way, tighter, the corners sharper. The plastic cup held the same ring of water, but when I lifted it, it was dry. My keycard worked here on the first try. I set my bag on the chair and felt a lightness, a small click in my chest as if a sequence had found its next digit. The freight train called on the minute. I checked the window gap. The neon vacancy sign blinked in the same weary rhythm. In the mattress, a dip waited on the side I hadn't used. The alarm clock counted 2 minutes slow. I walked back to room 12 to return the key, to make whatever tidy gesture the place wanted from me. The door opened without resistance. The bed there was made, corners tucked, a receipt folded on the nightstand with both names printed, mine, and a second I didn't recognize, stamped with yesterday's date. My pockets felt lighter. I reached in and found 2 receipts from 2 rooms, totals matching but not equal, as if mirror math had its own rules. The peephole glass showed a different walkway for a breath, darker, shinier, the tracks outside pressed in a pattern that crossed itself. I blinked, and it was the same pale concrete, the same rust bloom near the stair rail. The TV in 12 clicked on by itself and found the late ad without searching. In 21, the TV stayed black and humming, screen cool to the touch. I carried my bag back to 21 because the number I'd been given had to count for something. I set the latch and drew the curtain and waited for the train. When the horn climbed the night at its practiced minute, the wind pushed the thin door gently inward, a pressure that went away when I put my palm against it. In the mirror over the sink, my reflection hesitated, then matched. Behind it, on the counter, a suitcase waited that wasn't mine. The color was right. The scuffs were not. My hands knew its handle. My memory did not. Crisis arrived without a bang. Only a quiet doubling. 2 rooms, 2 receipts, 2 beds made to my weight, and the suitcase in the mirror that I almost knew. I stood between 12 and 21, walkway heat holding its breath, and felt the place split me along a seam I hadn't grown. Both rooms claimed me, and both had the kind of evidence you don't argue with. Ink, imprints, numbers that refuse to round. Inside 21, the clock ran 2 minutes slow. In 12, 2 minutes fast, a mirror minute chasing itself. The receipts matched to the cent, while disagreeing on the math of names. I could keep crossing, back and forth, and let the motel divide me into tolerable fractions. Or I could set a pattern that didn't belong to either side. Choice lives in small things at night. I chose the hour the freight train always owned. I went to 21 and opened the curtains wide, a challenge and an invitation, and sat in the chair where the mirror could watch me choose. I set both receipts under the lamp. I placed the stranger suitcase on the bed, zipper teeth shut tight, handle worn where my hand had never rubbed. The AC's hum held steady, half a note above the other room's softer drone, and I let its thin breath press against my skin until the minute hand neared the ritual. The horn broke the hour with that practiced wail, and the wind shouldered the thin door. It bowed an inch, then eased as my palm met it, the way a body yields when it wants to be gentle. The curtains breathed. The mirror stayed honest for once, showing only tonight's shirt, tonight's face, tonight's hands on the line of the door. Behind me, the suitcase shifted a hair, settling like something inside had inhaled. I turned the case toward the mirror and flipped the latches. Inside lay orderly clothes I'd never folded, the same brand and color as mine, scuffed in the places my habits would scuff them, not where my history had. A folded receipt lay on top. Same total, wrong date. The name that wasn't mine looked like my handwriting had learned a new tilt. I held it to the glass. My reflection held the other receipt, the one with my name, and for a pulse the two papers overlaid each other and made one. Across the lot, room 12 clicked once, loud in the way a thin sound can be. Its TV found the late ad again. I let it speak. In 21, I set my pattern. I opened every curtain, every drawer, turned on the bathroom light, and sat by the window with the receipts face up, like roads laid on a table. The motel loves routines. I gave it a new one. Wind pressed. Train called again, echoing itself across rails and years. The mirror held, finally in the present, only a small ripple around my mouth, as if the glass had to exhale. Morning arrived easy. The clerk at the office had different eyes and a new, tired smile. They slid a fresh folio toward me and greeted me like a first arrival. The total matched last year's to the cent, the pen tracing my name without asking why. I drove. The road forgot to end again. At a rest stop hours later, the mirror over the sink caught me, and for a breath, the bed at the motel waited behind my shoulder. Neat corners, suitcase closed, curtains open to a blinking sign. I turned. Only paper towels and a hand dryer, a trash can with yesterday's cup. The reflection took one late blink, and then we were together again, present and whole, just outside the light. Story 4. Hotel with the hallway that moves. Now the bright lobby, the soft music that lets your shoulders lower, the lemon-scented halls that promise predictability the way a catalog promises a life. I checked in with a tired smile, a folio that folded cleanly, a key card that slid into a little sleeve like it knew where sleep would happen. The elevators whispered up and down with velvet restraint, every bell a polite nod that someone, somewhere, had arrived. I wanted standard shapes, a bed that matched a brochure. Meetings at dawn had taken my edges, and I needed rest that came without questions. The hallway absorbed my footsteps, carpet dense and forgiving, Art hung at the same height every 10 yards. Room numbers lined up in a confident sequence that felt like a handrail for the mind. I turned left, then right, counting doors because that is how I steady myself. It was subtle at first. After the second corner, the distance to the next turn lengthened by a breath, maybe two. The runner pattern underfoot stretched its diamonds without losing their shape, as if the loom had sighed and given a little. The numbers on the doors drifted by two, a small slide you could blame on fatigue. I told myself I had miscounted. I told myself the floor plan made a loop. The lemon scent lingered, and the AC whispered from vents that didn't seem to have openings. My key opened a room that could have been the model for all the others. Crisp duvet, neutral art, a desk angled just so, a chair that rolled with quiet dignity. The blackout curtains fell in a clean line when I let them go. I dropped my bag and walked straight to the window, because outside is how I anchor inside. The view showed a parking lot I knew from the map to be on the other side. The car I had left on level 3 sat in a spot that didn't exist from this angle, silver where I remembered it being dark. I checked my phone. The blue dot on the map didn't rest on a floor, but in the narrow blank between levels, an impatient ghost. Meetings waited beyond dawn. I could not afford to wrestle with geography. I let the thought slide and reached for routine. Unpack, plug in, set alarms, run water, watch it go clear from its first cloudiness, proof that pipes remember how to behave. Motifs lay where hotels always leave them. A distant elevator bell softening with distance, the soft rumble from the ice machine like a purr behind a door, the low, constant whisper of centralized air that moves without a register to trap it. The Do Not Disturb tag lifted from the desk with a polite weight. I looped it on the handle, and in the still air it shifted, a tiny swing that made no sense without a hand. Under the bed, when I checked for the usual forgotten charger or wrapper, I found a second tag folded once, crisp, with the same font, the same red circle, as if the room had been given an extra silence. I told myself story beats to stay calm. The hallway had felt longer after each turn because I was tired. The numbers had drifted because I'd stopped paying attention. The view was wrong because I had misunderstood the hotel's footprint. I rubbed a thumb over the folded tag and set it beside the other like two closed eyes. When I stepped back into the hall to find ice, the small ceremony that says, "This is my room for the night," I counted the steps to the machine I could hear but not see. 12 to the turn, 15 after the turn, then 14 when I returned, and the hum of the ice machine shifted in pitch by half a breath, as if it had thought of something and forgotten it. Another guest passed me with the tired smile of a person who has said goodnight too many times, and a minute later the same guest passed again the other way with the same smile, unchanged, as if time had spun them once and set them back down. I kept my head steady and my eyes on the numbers. The floor promised logic and offered drift. Back in the room, the key turned with a contented click, a creature returning to its place. The Do Not Disturb tag on the outside swayed once more and then rested, and inside, the second tag lay where I'd left it, a twin waiting for a rule. I closed the curtains against a parking lot that shouldn't have been there, and let the hotel's hush press close, standard shapes holding deeper seams, just outside the light. I mapped the hall by steps to the ice machine. 12, then 15, then 13 back, while the hum slipped a half note, like thought interrupting breath. Another guest drifted past twice with the same tired smile, like a loop practicing. I took the stairs. They returned me to the same floor number, but the carpet's pattern had changed. Diamonds tilting, warmer lamps, soap scent sweeter. The front desk thanked me for reporting the drift, advised staying in room until morning reset. I set a chair against the door and listened to elevator bells. Their spacing widened, then doubled up, skipped heartbeats, while the room held its lemon hush. At 3, the hotel forgot to breathe. The elevator bells stopped mid-thought. The ice machine swallowed its purr. Even the central air held its whisper, like a throat closed on a word. The hush pressed at the walls until the room felt padded with silence. I sat up without turning on a light. The chair against the door seemed too loud for the quiet it was guarding. I lifted the chair, set it aside, and eased the handle. The door gave a careful inch, then another, as if the hallway had been waiting with its ear to the seam. What lay outside wasn't the length I'd walked before. The corridor had shortened itself to 5 doors, end to end like a row of teeth, and beyond them a mirror where the hall should continue, reflecting a longer corridor that didn't fit into the space. I stood in the threshold and let my eyes adjust. The 5 door numbers belonged to this floor, but the order ran slightly wrong, a sequence that skipped and then apologized. The end mirror held my reflection, small and centered, but when I moved my hand, the figure in the glass lifted its arm first, then paused, then waited for me to catch up. I stepped forward, counting under my breath the way I had counted steps to the ice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The carpet's diamonds stayed obedient. The scent leaned sweet, then not. Then the lemon returned like a practiced smile. At the mirror, cool air reached my skin from a space where glass should be. The corridor beyond looked like a truer version of this one, longer, brighter by a breath, with the elevator light flickering at the far corner, an impossible distance that still felt close. My reflection in that distance glanced aside, then back, then took a step I hadn't taken. I raised my palm. My double met me, not matching but leading, as if rehearsal had gone on without me. I thought about stepping through the cool. The floor yawned open in the smallest ways, inviting a footfall that might not return the same. I chose counting instead. I stepped backward, slow, naming the numbers in reverse like a tide retreating on purpose. 5, 4, 3. The mirror's air stayed cool. 2. The elevator bell offered a single far note, like a memory checking its time. 1. My room's door waited where I had left it, tag stilling itself, chair angled aside like a polite question. Inside, I turned the key once, an old habit in a latchless world. The room accepted the sound. The lemons returned to the air. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened as the building's systems remembered how to hum. The elevator bells found their spacing again, a normal heartbeat returning after a stutter. I slept with the bedside lamp on its lowest click, and my bag upright like a companion willing to leave quickly if asked. Sunrise stretched the hallway to its proper length, and then a little more, the way morning light can exaggerate distance. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. In the lobby, checkout printed a folio with my room number and charges precise to the cent. Then a second folio printed itself from the same machine, identical sums and dates, but a wrong room number stamped in bold. The clerk smiled, untroubled, hands practiced at smoothing paper and mood. I took both, and didn't argue with mathematics the building preferred. Outside, the elevator bell followed me one last time, a soft note that seemed to arrive from the open air rather than from shafts and cables. It faded as the car door opened, and the road made a simple promise: forward, then home.